All right, and we are live. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. This is. Oh, do I not have sound? No audio? Hello? Hello, 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 hello. Uh-oh. No sound. Oh, I do have sound? Oh, it is playing. Oh, okay. What the? That's looks wrong. Oh, it wasn't showing up on my little thing. All right, welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Sorry for the weird start there. I legitimately thought that my sound wasn't working because my little Scarlet 2i2 wasn't showing it up. So, all right, welcome in, everybody. This is episode number 130 of the Calibrated live show with your host, Scott. Of course, me, Scott. I am Scott. Fixing my mic again because it keeps falling. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Welcome back in. It has been Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, 5 days since our last live stream, the one with Brian, and 6 days since our last map update. So we have 6 days of map updates to go through real quick. I hope everybody had an amazing week since the last time you were all here. The Iranian Putin, I appreciate your time, my friend. I appreciate your time and you being here, my friend. Thank you for being here. Remember, guys, if you have questions that you want answered during the show, you can always do so through super chats. I always answer those live on air. If you have, let me think. If you want to find more of my work, you can go to the link in the description of this YouTube video. Man, my brain is crossed up today. And find my Telegram and my Twitter. You can follow me on both of those for constant updates on Ukraine and the live stream. Man, my brain to my mouth is just not working right now, guys. So give me a second to get the ball rolling. I do apologize. All right. Let's just go ahead and get right into it, right over to the map updates. I'm going to go and retweet my live stream real fast, and then we will start the updates. Here we go. Okay. Move over here. And then I'm going to go retweet, and then we will get started. I hope all of you had a great week. I've been so busy. I'm doing so many different things right now. Outside of this, but also this, trying to maintain all of this. It's a lot of work, but I've been doing my best trying to get you guys maps and stuff. Sorry if things are a little delayed here and there, or if there's not consistent live streams. I'm sorry. I would like it to be much more consistent, but it is what it is. All right. So the first area we're going to talk about is the Russian bridgehead over the Oskil River region here. We have a Russian advance into Dubrovka, which is across the Nazania Dvorishina River right here, which, I talked about the Ukrainians had retreated behind previously. The Russians have crossed the Oskil right here and have entered the city itself. This city is probably going to fall within the next week or two as the Russians begin to really expand this bridgehead north of Kupiansk. Down here to the south, Russian forces have been geolocated. It's nothing. It's just this area right here, but it's titled Kalinove. I don't know if the Russians actually pushed from the north down, which is possible. Some Russian sources were claiming that the Russians had crossed the Oskil in another area right here, and this is a new bridgehead, which will likely meet up with this bridgehead to the north. So I put this area in purple as, unconfirmed Russian territorial gains, just because I don't know if they came from the south or if they crossed over from the this end of the Oskil River. All right. Moving south, not a ton of movement up here. This happened last weekend, so this is a pretty old update. Not a ton of movement up here more recently. Moving down to the Chasiv Yar area, just north of Chasiv Yar, along the canal here. Which, remember, this canal is very important for the Russians to push out along. Russian forces have entered into Orahovo Vasilivka right here. and captured half of the village. Not a major advance, but weakening Ukrainian lines everywhere. The Russians are able to advance just because there's failed rotations and stuff like that going on in the Ukrainian armed forces. So, all right. Moving down into Chasiv Yar, this encirclement is still reportedly going on. I haven't changed this because I don't know if this is the current situation. It could change. I don't really know what's happening here. We do know that the refractory plant here, this industrial zone, which was the heart of the Ukrainian defense line in Chasiv Yar, has been fully captured by Russian forces. And it is likely that Russian forces have also pushed out and captured everything north of this reservoir right here, and that Ukrainian forces have retreated into these rear villages, which means that they have forfeited the high ground right here, the elevated territory in Chasiv Yar, which will mean that the Russians will be able to advance up the canal here, as well as down the road through Stopochki and towards Konstantinivka. And this coincides directly with the fall of Toretsk as well, which we are going to talk about here in just a second. Yes, this is indeed true. Chasiv Yar is cooked. It is, the situation does not look very promising for the Ukrainians. Like I said, this was the defense line right here, and they have lost this defense line. So as this develops, the Ukrainians are just falling back onto low ground right here, where the Russians will be able to control the entire battlefield. And like I said, most importantly, capturing Stopochki, as I had talked about multiple times before, and advancing into the Konstantinivka, the city of Konstantinivka, the conglomerate, which is almost, is it bigger than Bakhmut? It's similar in size to Bakhmut, but I think it's a little bit bigger. I think Konstantinivka is a little bit bigger here. So another major battle on the horizon for the Russians. We'll see how long the Ukrainians are able to defend. I wouldn't count on anything at this point. I think that the situation is so fluid and so on edge that anything could happen at any moment. And I would really be very careful about making like predictions about timings and when things are going to happen, because here pretty soon things are going to really start to kick off and snowball. So just be on the lookout for that. 2 Russian advances in Toretsk. Russian forces have basically captured the entirety of the city. There's still this part of the city, Kermisky, right here, as well as the industrial zone. But the Russians have captured almost all of Toretsk, barring this little area over here, this forested area. And they have also advanced into Novospassky, which again is just encircling this entrenched position right here. There is a major fortification position in this area that is now being surrounded from both sides. So this will probably be withdrawn from in the near future, and then this line will completely level right here, and then you'll begin to see the Russians begin operations into this open area as well. All right, now moving into the bulk of the advances here. These I would consider just to be sort of extra advances. They're not the primary focus of the Russian offensives. It's just these areas seem to be weakening consistently. So the Russians are able to move through Chasiv Yar, through Toretsk, and through the northern end of Kupiansk here, just because Ukrainian lines are so weak. There's not necessarily dedicated offensive operations, maybe in Chasiv Yar a little bit more than some other areas. There is pressure. I don't mean that the Russians aren't conducting assaults and stuff. It's just there's not the hyper focus that we see in southern Donetsk with the consistent gains and the consistent pressure. All right, so moving down into the Pokrovsk area, Russian forces have made what the heck happened here? Russian forces have made significant advances into the western area of Pokrovsk. So not Pokrovsk itself, but the area just west of Pokrovsk, which is a really, really bad thing for somebody to say when they're looking at a map right now. The fact that the Russians are already this far west of Pokrovsk is a really, really bad sign. The Russians should not be moving in this area the way that they are. Remember, this is the very extent of the Russian spearhead here. And you can see now from Udachny, Avdiivka is like 33 miles in the rear, so some 50, 60 kilometers in the rear. It just to show you how much progress has been made from the fall of Avdiivka. And as you can see here, the Russians have gained access to the T-0406 highway, which is one of the major logistics lines that runs into Pokrovsk. It also runs to Mezova, which now means that the Russians are going to be pushing into what should be the next rear staging position for this entire line right here, or one of them. I remember I showed you guys on the map right here. I showed you guys on the map this area where the Ukrainians are going to have to retreat from. Andriivka is about to fall. The Ukrainians are going to have to fall back into these fields. They're not going to be able to hold them long. The Russians are eventually going to enter Dnipropetrovsk Oblast if they so choose. And as I talked about in one of my posts, you guys can go see it. It's in my most recent collapse post. This area right here is where I expect the Russians to push out into. And then they will use Propasnaya and Mezova to the north to supply this defense line. If the Russians can interdict that quickly and push out of Udachny into these little villages here, Rapole, and then into Mezova, that's going to very, very much complicate the Ukrainian situation here, especially because this road, again, is one of these sort of crossroads cities where all of the available roadways all enter and meet into. So this will further complicate Ukrainian logistics into this area. And if the Russians are able to push from the south here in Velyka Novosilka, which we will talk about, up to this highway right here, that will completely cut off all supply into this region itself, forcing the capitulation of Andriivka and these other Constantinople and all of these other little towns right here. So this is the area you guys should be watching. And specifically, the western end of Pokrovsk. And remember, I had talked about the way I foresaw the Russians advancing through the east, right? I figured that they were going to come this way over to the north here of Minhorod and push into Rodinske, because this is the high ground in the region. And I'm going to take you guys over the topographical map so kind of get a mental picture of what's happening here in the orange. And this is where I expect the Russians to advance into and out of, to start to encircle Pokrovsk and Minhorod. And as you can see on this side, they have experienced much, much more success in exactly what I had talked about, pushing up for Horishny and cutting the E50 highway into Pokrovsk. That's going to make, again, supply much more difficult, going to make holding Pokrovsk much more difficult. And by the time the Russians reach these two areas on the side, we should see Russian advancement into the city from the south itself as the supply situation deteriorates and gets worse and worse. The Russians have also reached the rail line here, which goes into Udachny. This rail line is also on the high ground, which I will show you in a minute. So the Russians have kind of breached the next Ukrainian line. They have captured the village of Kotelin, and they have entered the village of Udachny. Both are likely to fall in the coming days, as the sort of the entering of the village is the end of the village most of the time. Once the Russians get a foothold and they're able to secure cover and able to start a supply train into the town falls. And as you can see, the Russians have captured this large mine or industrial facility right here. So this will be the jumping off point for the rest of the capture of Udachny, as well as the mine up here. Very important mine right there. This is the mine, by the way, where all of the Ukrainian coal for their steel production comes from. So huge, huge loss. I believe that's this one, just north of Udachny. Okay. To the south, Russian forces have again advanced north of Andriivka. They've captured the village of Yazanove and advanced out of Slavyanka. The most important aspect of this, again, they're going to follow the road down here, but capturing this large fortified line right here it is going to be very necessary for further advancements. You can see down here to the south, or just to the west of Andrivka, I guess, to the east, or sorry, to the east of Andrivka, to the west of Kharkov. Russian forces have captured these two fortifications that lie just outside. And here, I'll zoom in on this one. You guys can kind of see what these fortifications. This is a pretty serious fortification. Lots of dugouts, lots of trenches, lots of connections, lots of tunnels, bunkers and stuff. So this is a pretty big deal. The Russians have taken a slight tactical pause here. I believe the next step will be to assault this next line just to the north. All right, staying in the Udachny area here, moving down, the Dashani area here. We can see that Russian forces have again advanced out of Kharkov. This is still sort of a salient. Don't know why the Ukrainians are still sitting here. They're just trying to hold this particular defense line for as long as possible, I believe. But it is falling. As you can see, the Russians are advancing through the defense lines and have entered the village of Dashane, as well as captured. This is not really is it a village? I guess this is a village. Yantarne right here. Which is for some reason named up here, even though it's mostly down here. But that has also been captured. This entire area is likely to just begin to close in the near future. My dogs came in, which is okay. All right. You might see some shadows because my dog is walking around in front of one of my lights. Hey, buddy. All right, now moving down to Velyka Novosilka, and this is where the title of this stream comes from, Tactical Nightmare. What we're looking at in Velyka Novosilka is an absolute shit show. I don't know who let this happen. I don't know who lets this continue to happen. We saw this exact same thing in Kharkov. We saw this exact same thing in Ugledar. We saw this exact same thing in Seladove. Seladove, so far in the back now, I can't even remember. We saw the same thing in Avdiivka, same thing everywhere, right? We see the same Ukrainian mistakes over and over again, and the Russians continue to exploit these mistakes in their long-term goal of attrition of Ukrainian forces. So as you can see here, the Ukrainians had lost access to Velyka Novosilka through roads quite some time ago. So this is not a new update necessarily that the entire line has been cut. However, the Ukrainians were utilizing these dirt roads that ran on the eastern or on the western bank of the Mokoryali River right here down through Velyka Novosilka. Russian forces have now advanced. These are two separate advances. So this advance we got just today, but a few days ago or yesterday, Nezkuchine was captured by Russian forces, and then Vermika was captured by Russian forces today. So two massive advancements here. Sort of the Ukrainians found themselves in a pocket here, and then were forced to retreat from this area because they can't retreat into the city because there's nowhere to retreat out of the city. So the only place they could go was up to this next defense line up here on this beyond this low ground, this reservoir river area right here. And it is likely that the rest of the pocket is now being forced to retreat and likely swimming across the river to get out. We have seen no signs of pontoons in this region. And even if there is a pontoon, it is likely to get hit almost immediately, considering how tight this area to cross is. So the Ukrainians will likely have to get wet and wade across this to reach this defense line and extract themselves. But this is just a happenstance of today. The Ukrainians have been cut off for like at least 6 days now. The road has been cut. I think it's longer than that, probably closer to 2 weeks. But I made a post 5 days ago saying that I thought that the Russians were going to hold this open as long as possible. It appears that they did, and now the Ukrainians are retreating from this area. The loss of Velyka Novosilka is going to be extremely damaging to the entire defense of this area. It really just opens up from here. And there's not a ton of strong defenses north of this location. So this is sort of the last remaining strong defense line in the region, and even this is not particularly strong. To the north of Velyka Novosilka, Russian forces have just expanded out, and this is probably what it was sort of the whole time, but now we have geolocations that can confirm that this is the situation in Velyka Novosilka. Again, another pit that the Ukrainians are just trying to keep open for PR's sake. They're going to lose Velyka Novosilka. They are going to lose the Kursk region, and they are going to lose probably Pokrovsk and the entire southern Donetsk region rather quickly here. Things are moving very fast, and I know it's hard to kind of notice how fast things are moving when it's like you get used to the pace, right? So right now, this seems like normal. But if you would have seen something like this 2 years ago or a year ago in 2023, everybody's jaw would be dropped that the Russians advanced this far. What happened? How this is a catastrophe for the Ukrainians. Now this isn't even news. Ukrainian sources aren't even dooming about this. This is just reality now. Russian sources aren't really celebrating about these advances. It's just what it is. You know, these are all major advances. I mean, this is 5 square miles, another 5 square miles, 3 square miles, 3 and 3, 6 square miles down here. So you have some pretty significant chunks of territory that are being captured week after week after week, and it's really starting to accelerate. And you know, the Ukrainians are just deteriorating. And I wanted to actually go and point out a specific post by Rob Lee, always posting the Ukrainian bits of information. So, good afternoon. Urgent appeal. Publicity is needed. We, the aviation technical personnel of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, have been performing our responsible mission on the MiG-29 fighters for over 10 years. Since 2014, we have been preparing and servicing aircraft, ensuring combat flights in the most difficult conditions, both day and night, defending our motherland from the enemy. Our efforts are aimed at servicing, supporting, and restoring aviation equipment, during which time we have mastered new types of aircraft and weapons provided by our Western partners. We also provide training and renewal of flight training for graduates of the KH and UPS. We had the honor of working alongside such legendary pilots, blah, 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 blah. And each of us firmly believe in mission, loyalty, blah, blah, blah. However, today we are facing a real challenge that could jeopardize not only the ability to perform combat missions, but also destroy the very foundation of our aviation. Our unit received a telegram about the transfer of almost all technicians to infantry, which means that we will be left without the technical personnel who service our aircraft. Previously, 250 people have already been taken away. Now they plan to transfer another 218 of the technical staff is actually being destroyed. And without us, the aviation will not be able to function. We are trying to maintain combat readiness, but without maintenance personnel, it is simply impossible. And if we do not receive support and publicity now, we will lose the opportunity not only to defend our land, but we will also lose the very foundation of our aviation. There we go. So basically what's happening is the Ukrainians are in a position now where they are pulling. We just saw the article, and I can show you it's in the same thread. The article about the air defense units being taken apart and personnel being transferred from air defense units into infantry. We are now seeing pilots and airplane technicians being transferred from their positions in the Air Force to infantry positions. This is the Luftwaffe brigade. This is the end, guys. You are taking your most valuable personnel, who are aircraft technicians, whether they have MiG-29s anymore or Su-24s or whatever. It doesn't really matter. People that know how to work on aircraft can be trained to work on other aircraft. You don't want to throw these people away just because you need infantry, right? No, there is a disaster happening in the Ukrainian armed forces, and they're being forced to transfer aircraft technicians, which are not going to make good frontline soldiers, to the front line to, work in active combat with other infantry brigades. And that's just, it's a complete waste. It's asinine and ridiculous. And the fact that we're seeing that just shows the kind of position that the Ukrainian armed forces are in. And I'm unfortunately, what I think is about to happen is you're about to see 18 to 25-year-olds be mobilized. For those of you who don't know, 26 plus has been the only group that has been mobilized in Ukraine. It's why a lot of the Ukrainian armed forces is much older. And the actual male population of 18 to 25-year-olds is really one of the smaller, or the smallest, male populations in Ukraine. So mobilizing that group would be the death of Ukraine. But the Biden administration is pushing hard for it right now. They're out in 3 days, so I don't think the Zelensky government, the Zelensky regime, is going to be listening to them anymore, or hasn't been for a while. And we will see what Trump decides to do. It's looking very, very, very bad for Ukraine and Europe right now. Trump seems like he actually just wants to get the hell out of there, which is smart, awesome, good. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition the way it should, but we will wait and see. It's sort of a time will tell situation to see how Trump is able to negotiate and deal with the situation. But the Ukrainians don't appear that they want any negotiations. So the only real option for Trump then is just to pull support and pull out, and hope that, Ukraine hopes that Europe will be able to pick up that bill. We did just see the United Kingdom has just pledged support for 100 years for Ukraine. So this will be funny in 2 years. But the UK pledges support for Ukraine with 100-year pact. And I just want you guys to listen to this because it's very funny. Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position in a trip to Kiev, where he signed a landmark 100-year pact with the war-stricken country. The prime minister's visit on Thursday was at one point marked by loud explosions and air raid sirens as Ukraine's defense systems intercepted a Russian drone attack. Oh, the terror. Acknowledging the hello from Russia, Vladimir Zelensky said Ukraine would send a hello back. Oh my God, how cringy is this? How absolutely cringe is this article? Like, who writes that and thinks it's cool? It's so lame. The Ukrainian president praised the UK's commitment against the backdrop of wider concerns that U.S. President Donald Trump could reduce aid. Zelensky is looking to firm up security guarantees from key allies that are there are worries the new U.S. administration could start pushing Ukraine to make a peace with Russia. How are they going to do that? I don't know, but they're going to, just by holding back aid, which is funny. Because the option is give us more stuff to go die with, or we'll negotiate. Seems pretty straightforward to me. On Thursday, UK Prime Minister vowed to commit more support to Ukraine in its ongoing war effort against Russia, which it has been fighting since February 22nd, or February 2022, if you guys did not know. We are with you, not just today, not for the next year, but for 100 years. Sure. Long after this terrible war is over and Ukraine is free, thriving once again underneath the Russian Federation, he told Zelensky. Sir Keir said the air raid greeted him in Kiev was a reminder of the daily attacks and resolve of the Ukrainian people in the face of it. Blah, 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 blah. Annoying bullshit jargon. But as you can see, the British are still in a position where they are not talking about peace. They're not talking about negotiation. Picking up where Trump may be leaving off in terms of support. Impossible, because the U.S. can't even pick up where it's supporting right now. We can't continue supporting at the same level we are. And Britain is somehow going to fill that gap with all of its fantastic industry and thriving economy and great domestic situation. For sure. Cool. So make a 100-year pact to make sure the PR stays good, make sure Ukraine feels like they're good to keep fighting, and nothing actually changes and nothing actually gets done. I actually think it says in this Thursday pact formalizes economic and military support for support the UK had already promised to Ukraine. Yeah, so most of what I'm pretty sure that 100-year pact is saying is we're actually going to deliver all the stuff we've promised to deliver, but we haven't actually delivered yet, which again, fantastic. That's all I have for today, guys. If you guys want to go ahead and put some questions in, I can talk. I have a little bit to talk, so go ahead, rip away. I'm trying to think. I don't think there was anything else I wanted to talk about. It's been kind of slow. Pretty chill. What do I think about the Hamas ceasefire deal? Yeah, I forgot that happened. Hamas and Israel seem to have agreed upon a ceasefire. I don't know how long this is going to last. I think this is sort of a really bad sign for Israel. They didn't really accomplish what they wanted to accomplish in Lebanon. They did end up overthrowing Assad in Syria. Maybe it wasn't them, but the pressure, the U.S. sanctions. I consider Israel part of the U.S., so that happened. But it doesn't necessarily benefit Israel now because the Assad regime was stable. Right. That's the thing about these regimes in the Middle East is you can want them to go because they do bad things or for whatever reason. But from Israel's position, Assad was a known variable. Now you have, Turkish encroachment into Syria, which is not going to be good for Israel. You have Egyptian and you have this tension with Egypt now in the south, and the Benjamin Netanyahu government, the Bibi government, did not accomplish its primary goal of the destruction of Hamas. They made a deal with Hamas, right? And it's to get the hostages back and stuff like that. We'll see what ends up happening. But to me, it really looks like they kind of failed in their objectives. And the only way that they were going to really accomplish their objectives from the beginning, they should have known this 15 months ago, was the extermination of Gaza and the complete genocide of the entire area, which I think they would have gone through with if they had the choice. But there are too many backers in the equation that cannot have that happening. We don't live in a world where a genocide goes unnoticed, especially when in America, half of the at least like the Democrats tend to be more pro-Palestine and more anti-Israel. So I don't think that this is a very good thing for Israel. It's a great thing for Israel in terms of not continuing to lose young boys to a stupid, pointless war. But it is what it is. I will see if it lasts. I don't trust Israel I don't trust the West as far as I can throw them when it comes to any peace deals or agreements. So we'll see. We'll see how it stands in 6 months. I hope it ends. I hope those people get food and water and everything they need. Any good Lancet strikes lately? No, I don't know about Lancets. There's been a couple of good Lancet strikes, but mostly what I've been seeing is a lot of fiber optic FPV strikes. And those have been doing some work. The Russians are now doing like dual warhead RPG fiber optic FPV drones, so way more explosive power. They're becoming very dangerous. Yo, bro, why am I banned on Telegram? I DM'd you. I did not ban you. I do not ban people on my Telegram. You're not banned from my actual Telegram, right? You're just banned from the Ballistic Brotherhood, probably because you said a word that is in our bot's automatic ban list or whatever. I'll look at it. DM me again and I'll unban you, unless you were doing something stupid. I told my admins don't put up with like dumb racism and shit. It's stupid. I have a good question. Do you feel bad about the innocent Ukrainians killed by Russia? Yeah, I feel bad for all of the people that die, all of the innocent people who die everywhere. Why wouldn't I? Do you care about the innocent Russians who have died in all of this? Like, they're people too. See, I don't think you do because you have an Azov thing. Is that Jimmy? Did Jimmy just change his logo? Dork. What a dork, dude. What a dork. Hey, you know that all of Azov is like completely destroyed, right? It doesn't exist anymore. So just so you know, you're repping a dead man's brigade, but that's okay. Yeah, no, I definitely feel sorry for the innocents. I was the one from the very beginning who said this war didn't need to happen, along with most of the Russian political leadership. They were all about Minsk 1, all about Minsk 2. Angela Merkel and the other European leaders who are part of that were explicitly said it was to buy Ukraine more time to then fight this war. So, you know, when you're talking about this, you're like, well, don't you feel bad about all the innocent people that Russia has killed? Not really. I feel more guilty about all of the innocent Ukrainians that the U.S. has gotten killed. The Ukraine is falling on its sword right now for the United States. And, you know, if we weren't there, this would not be happening. The Russians would be pumping gas into Europe, pumping gas through Ukraine. The Ukrainians would be getting all that oil money, letting that come through their country. If they were just pragmatic, none of this would have been happening. But instead, they chose to go the route of aggression against Russia and following, you know, the NATO pathway, same way Georgia did. You know, the goal is to isolate, suffocate, and destroy Russia the same way we did after the Cold War. And then we go in, we steal all the resources, and we forever part the Russo-Chinese relationship that we were desperately trying to prevent. Now we've just made it stronger and more resilient, and that's unfortunate. So no, I feel guilty. I don't necessarily feel bad because the Russians are fighting a war. I mean, it sucks that innocents are dying. I hate that innocents are dying in Gaza. I hate that innocents die anywhere. It sucks. Thank you for your question, Jimmy. Have you ever discussed your criteria for updating your map? Yeah, so I have a 3-source system. I have if I have specific sources that I really trust, and sometimes I don't always wait for 3 sources. If somebody nails it and something makes perfect sense, or you know, I have a geolocation, those happen right away. But I do have a 3-source system where I have a bunch of sources on the front lines. Some of them are public sources, you know, that I've looked at for a long time. They're not wrong. They definitely have connections to the front line. If 3 of those sources confirm the same information, I then will map it. Or if one of my actual sources on the ground confirms it, then I will map it right away, because the 2 sources I actually have never been wrong ever one time. So, and I'm pretty sure that comes down to OPSEC. They're only allowed to say certain stuff when certain things happen. So that's more of the situation there. Oh wait, no, Jimmy is different than Jim Smith? Crazy. Okay. Different Jimmy. Don't confuse us all with that idiot. Oh yeah, Jimmy Jams. Nice. Well, Jimmy Jams, I didn't think you were that Jimmy. I just knew that Jim was named Jim Smith, and then this Jimmy has a Azov thing. Scott, I'm imagining you with dreadlocks. Please think about it. Horrible. Scott's a bald loser who dates brown women. I don't know why he even bothers wasting his time when he's mega globalist cornball. What does that even mean? Dating brown women? I've dated Hispanic women in the past. I am a bald loser, though, so you got me there. Scott's a midweight cornball, for sure. God, I love that people spend their time to come in here and try to hate on me like I give a shit about some dork's online opinion. Oh, I love it. Thank you for content, everybody. Still doesn't justify invading a sovereign country. Nothing will ever justify that. Okay, well then, what are you going to say about the U.S., who's actively invading Syria, or Israel, who's invaded Lebanon, Gaza, and Syria, all within the past year? Right? Like, bro, shut the hell up. Every country invades every other country. That's how the world works. It's the way the world has always worked. Just because you grew up in the international law, like isolated time where the US was the hegemony and could, bully people into not doing things while they did all the things they were bullying people for, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore. So welcome to the new world. Congratulations. There is no justifying invading a sovereign country. There's no such thing as a sovereign country. Ukraine wasn't sovereign after its government was couped and the population didn't get to vote on who was going to be president, right? There was a civil war happening when they did those elections. Bro, it's so dumb. People just don't think. People just can't think for themselves. It's crazy. It's crazy. Can you imagine a scenario where UA or IL engage in terror? How long will they keep Turkey? We'll see. We'll see how I don't think that there's any reason why NATO and Turkey would break up right now. I don't see, even if the Turks went after the Kurds really hard and forced the US out of Syria, I don't really think it would make much of a difference to their standings in NATO. I don't think anything's going to change right now. I think everybody's kind of hunkered down. Already, can you say which fronts they're on? Or yes, I can actually. One is in southern Donetsk, so anywhere from Velyka Novosilka to Pokrovsk, I get information from that entire area, and then the other one's up in Kursk. But neither of them are fighting. Both of them just work in logistics in the back, as far as I know. I can only tell you what I've been told. The information they provide to me is often correct. Aiden is a race blind. Okay, well, first off, you spelled my name wrong. Also, what does race blind mean? I don't see race? What? Dude, I love the people that don't like me because they are consistently the dumbest people on the planet. It's fantastic. It's like, ooh, what is it like? I want to say like shooting fish in a barrel, but that would be really disingenuous to think of fish as being that stupid. For the right price, Scott, would you support Ukraine? I don't not support Ukraine. I do support Ukraine. I don't support Zelensky and that regime who are slaughtering Ukrainians and beating people up and throwing people in vans and killing journalists and doing all that. That's who I don't support. I don't care what you have to say about Russia. I don't really support Russia either. I just analyze the conflict and give you exactly what's happening. And if you don't like that information, that's because your bias is getting in the way of the truth. And that's okay. That's what happens to human beings. Safety and security is much more preferred than freedom and knowledge. If the Ukrainian army is collapsing, then why are places like Kupiansk, Seversk, Liman? Well, I mean, if you look north of Kupiansk, the Russians have already crossed the river and are bypassing Kupiansk itself. So Kupiansk isn't necessarily holding. Seversk is just one of these areas where the topography is really bad for where the Russians are at in terms of pushing. But it's also very stable in that the Ukrainians can't do anything to counter any of their actions. So it's just a real stable area that will eventually move once the north begins to move or the south collapses. I don't know. We'll see. Leave Scott alone, guys. You guys are being anti-Semitic. See, so I'm at the same time a Jew as I am a Vatnik, as at the same time a race blind retard. It's crazy, bro. I'm everything. Love it. Let's see. Do you think there will be a lot of activity around Africa in the next 4 years? I think Africa is a place of great riches, but no stability. So I think Africa will be the exact same way it's been since the 70s, which is just, regime change after regime change, coup after coup. Islamic uprising after Islamic uprising in some of these areas like Boko Haram and stuff like this. And the great powers of the world, China, potentially Russia, since they're moving a lot of their Syria operation to Africa, and the United States and Europe might start to become big players in Africa again, and we could see a lot of conflict there. I don't doubt it at all, but I don't know if in 4 years that'll happen. It could be tomorrow. Who knows? How am I a globalist freak? I'm literally anti-U.S. establishment. I'm anti-U.S. foreign policy. I don't know. Is this just bad trolling? I don't get that. That's weird to me. What will happen if Ukraine takes out Turkstream? That's going to be a very, very bad move. We've already seen how much backlash has come to Ukraine from the shutting down of the pipelines that run through their territory, right? That's just not renewing contracts and allowing the transit. And Hungary and some of these countries, Slovakia, are very, very upset and are threatening to shut off their power, which they might have already. I'm not sure. But this is not a good thing. And if you blow up another country's energy infrastructure, it's a very, very dangerous thing to do. It's extremely dangerous. So we'll see. Nord Stream was, I think, so it should have been a one-off. But if it happens again, it's going to be. It's not good. It's not good for Ukraine. Think this was said by Jake Sullivan after the war. Sanctions will still be in place. I would think that they would use it as something to use at the negotiation tables. Your thoughts? Yeah. So the only way I would ever see the Russians actually coming to the negotiating table is if sanctions relief was offered, because that is what Russia would benefit the most from. I mean, more territory in Ukraine isn't necessarily going to do anything for them. If they can end the war on a positive note, get their 4 oblasts, get guarantees and get no NATO membership for Ukraine, I think the Russians would take that. I would take that if I was Putin. And then I would go immediately into preparing for the next thing from the United States, and also preparing to re-enter Ukraine if I see any sort of military buildup, any sort of continued force concentration or anything in Ukraine. It would be on a hair trigger for me to go back into Ukraine. To happen, no, I don't think that the United States is ever going to drop these sanctions until there is a catastrophic economic collapse somewhere, or a massive regime change, or something like that happens. I think that the U.S. is kind of locked in now. They're going to, the Trump administration really wants to shift to the Pacific. I think we could very easily begin to see a Ukraine situation developing in the South China Sea very soon. And I don't think taking those sanctions off of Russia does anything beneficial to the United States. And the United States doesn't give a shit about Europe. So. What kind of concessions, if any, do you think Russia could agree to as part of Trump's proposed negotiations, given the situation on the ground? What kind of concessions do you think Russia would agree to? Do you mean concessions from the United States? Like, what are they going to accept, or what concessions are they going to give? I don't think the Russians have to give any concessions right now. I think that they are in a fantastic position of strength. You can literally see the West squirming, not knowing what to do to prevent what's about to happen in Ukraine, because geostrategically they can't go back on all their sanctions and everything that they've put on Russia. That it's already done. Sanctions are a double-edged sword, right? It's already done the damage to yourself, so you might as well just keep going, because it's not going. Relieving those sanctions is only going to undo the damage you've done to Russia. It's not going to undo the damage you've done to yourself and Europe, right? Nord Stream is not going to be rebuilt. Germany is not going to have a cheap Russian energy pumping into their country right away after this war ends. These are things that they've been intentionally orchestrated and conducted to prevent any sort of negotiation, any sort of realliance between Europe and Russia in any sort of way economically. So I don't think that there's going to be negotiations. I don't think there's going to be any concessions from Russia. If you're talking about concessions from the United States, I think that the United States is more than willing to give up Ukrainian territory. They don't give a shit about that. And I think that they're more than willing to make a bunch of bullshit promises that will never be kept. And I think that the Russians are wiser than that, and they should be. And if the Russians take a bad deal, I am going to have a whole episode where I just go in on them, because if Putin goes for the same tired bullshit that the U.S. has been pushing time and time again, he's an idiot. And the U.S. is lucky that they're dealing with such idiots. And I don't think that's going to happen. War is over, game over for Ukraine. I agree, but we gotta, they still have, it's like, in the fourth quarter of a game when a team is up by like 20 something points and the game's over, but there's still 6 minutes and the team that's down is still trying to drive to the touchdown. And you're like, you're not going to score 3 touchdowns in 6 minutes, right? That's not going to happen. Your defense sucks. You haven't been getting 3 and outs or anything like that. And the Ukrainians are still in that fourth quarter, right? They still have energy. They still have momentum of some kind to continue fighting. It's not a complete game over. The war is just not going to end tomorrow, but you can see it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And, once you're throwing MiG technicians and air defense officers into infantry roles, things are getting pretty bad. Thank you guys for your questions tonight. It's been pretty good. Have you heard any news about Transnistria? No, only that I do have some. I do know somebody that lives there. That they're having a lot of gas issues because their gas has been cut off. I disliked you on the Duran, but thanks for watching. Don't Slovakia and Hungary use gas to generate electricity? Yeah, that's why they're cutting off the electricity that they provide to Ukraine, because Ukraine cut off the gas. So the gas that now what they're going to be producing in terms of electricity is going to be much smaller, and that needs to be designated for their population. Ukraine just took 2 more settlements inside of Kursk. No, they didn't. Where do you get this information from? Did Deep State? Hold on, let's go over to Deep State. Let's see if Deep State said that the Ukrainians grabbed any more territory inside of Kursk here. Let's go see, because I've been updating it as the gray zone has been shrinking. Oh, would you look at that? Here we go. I'll use a Ukrainian government source of mapping. You think they would talk about the advances, right? No, there's actually been no change. But as you can see in this part right here, the Ukrainians actually lost more this week. Lost. There you go. So, yeah, and that's today's date, and nothing has happened. So, I don't know what sources you're using, but if it's David or if it's any of those other super copy, basically what you need to do is you need to go on and see if they have me blocked. If those individuals have me blocked, don't listen to those individuals. They're dumb as hell. And I know you just want to confirm your bias, but according to the map, nothing happened in Kursk. So sorry, pal. Sorry. But that information, so this is a learning opportunity for you. That information is not correct, right? That information is a lie. And I'm sorry that you're being lied to, and I'm sorry that you're so gullible that you believe it, but that's a lie. And this is what we need to start paying attention to and figuring out. And it's going to make your life a lot easier when you start understanding like lies and fiction from truth and reality. Thanks for watching the stream, though. Appreciate it. Ukraine still has 1 million troops. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be losing territory if they had more troops than the Russians had. Thailand fund for you, Scott. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. I don't know what Thailand fund. Does that mean to go to Thailand? because I would love to go to Thailand and do like a live stream with Brian. That'd be sweet. But that can mean a lot of different things. So I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. What exactly happened to Deep State in those days? The government came after them because they were posting a lot of information that directly contradicted the Ukrainian MOD. And they were actually being very antagonistic against the Ukrainian MOD, calling them out, saying that they weren't doing the right things, talking about, you know, the disasters that were happening on the battlefield. At the time, I think it was Ugledar had fallen, and they were talking about Ugledar, and then Kharkov was happening, and they were just continuously losing these cities. And Deep State started talking a lot about how the Ukrainian government wasn't doing what they were supposed to do. And then they came after them in the way that any tyrannical regime, I mean, this happens in Russia too sometimes, where if you're talking bad about the the military, the armed forces, the government, anything like that, you can be subject to arrest, under military conditions in particular. And that, I think that's sort of what happened. But as we've seen, there's been this major ability for this strong ability, I guess you could say, for the Ukrainian population, the Ukrainian information space, to demand things of their government, because their government is so obsessed with their PR position, how they look and how they're perceived, that they are willing to go back on what they're doing to look better. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Deep State. Deep State was arrested. They didn't post for 3 days, and then they came back, and their posting has been delayed and not as aggressive towards the Ukrainian establishment. I don't know if they were replaced or if they just got the call and they don't want to die, which I don't blame them. You know, their mapping is not so important to die for. So, all right. Oh, Denny Davos. Yeah, no, okay. Well, no shit, dude. No shit. You don't know what's happening in Ukraine. You're following one of the biggest idiots when it comes to this topic. Bro, how could that be your source? You have to see that there are neutral sources. Don't listen to me. Think whatever you want to think about me, but go to other sourcing, because that guy has been so incredibly wrong and off since like the counteroffensive. It has been atrocious. I cannot believe that is what you drop in here. Holy shit, no wonder, bro. Oh my God. Oh, that is like I want to shake you when you were a baby after you just said that. That's so crazy. I have searched him. You don't have to tell me to go search him. He's dumb as hell. His videos are horrible. All it is cope. It's all pro-Ukrainian cope, and it's because he doesn't want to get drafted, because he should be in the trenches fighting with his other Ukrainian brothers and sisters. But instead, he's making YouTube videos that make you happy. Don't watch The Enforcer. Those guys banned me. I don't know what that means. Isn't this part of the problem in this war? No one can agree on what the facts are. Marco Rubio still thinks we're in. Well, no, that's just because intelligence that's reaching those individuals is very politicized. So the CIA, any U.S. intelligence agency, is a political agency. And the information they provide, the intelligence they provide, is not actual intelligence. It's curated intelligence to push narratives. So Marco Rubio is receiving the very end of the telephone chain, where people are taking stuff out and changing the situation, changing the intelligence a little bit here and there, wording it different, setting it up, presenting it in one way as to accomplish a political objective, which is continued support for Ukraine and continued bolstering of the U.S. military-industrial complex. Yeah, this is what I was worried about with the Thailand thing. Let's see. What would it mean for negotiations if the Russians indeed entered the Dnipro Oblast? It would be another talking point. Hey, we will leave this oblast, or we need this oblast, right? That's why I'm very curious to see if they enter it here in a little bit. I want to see how that develops. Do you think people under Biden, the Biden admin, are getting cold feet about Ukraine as well, or is this coming from Trump and some Republicans? No, the Biden administration wants to continue on. They were trying to figure out a way to continue supporting Ukraine. Eventually, I'm sure they're just going to steal the Russian assets and use that 280 billion or whatever to give Ukraine money instead of just the interest off of it. That'll probably be the way that they go forward, but we'll see. ISW claimed that Russian forces crossed the international border into Sumy Oblast and advanced south into the Vij. Yeah, I didn't map it because I didn't know if it was going to stay, and we still don't know. I haven't seen any updates on that area. Jimmy, do you think the Wolfsking in your avatar is really an I and an N for independent nation? Hey, whoa. Don't ask questions about Nazi iconography. We don't need to go there. Come on, man. It's just an emblem. I'm sure it doesn't have any bad connections to Banderism. I'm sure nothing. Sure nothing. What would it mean for negotiations if oh wait, I already answered that one. Thanks, Scott. I'll have to join more of these. Just found you a week ago from the Duran. Thank you, Blake. I appreciate you, man. I'm glad you are enjoying the content. Yeah, didn't Denny say that Crimea was going to get taken? Oh, what's up, Area? Good to see you in here. Any military? I don't know about strategy books necessarily, but if you haven't read Tiger Aces, that is a really good book from World War II. Talking to some of the guys that were some of the top Tiger commanders, and that is a strategic book. They talk about strategy in that book. I learned a lot from that book. I learned a lot about World War II in terms of like the vibe almost more than the stories that the stories that are told to you, I guess, are different from when the guys are talking about their experience in tanks and how they went against the Americans and how they thought the Americans thought, or how the Americans thought the Germans thought, or the Japanese, or, I love reading books like that. So yeah, Tiger Aces is one of my all-time favorite books. The key to the Russian success is that they are dealing with with reality, while Ukraine deals with narratives. Yep, exactly. They're a PR country. That's all they do. Do you think the attempted South Korean shenanigan helped their long-term relations with Russia? What attempted shenanigan? Are you talking about the coup? Because I'm still kind of fuzzy on what that whole coup thing was about. I don't think anybody really knows. Thank you, Ray. Ray, you make me happy. Are the Hungarians and Romanians a majority? I don't know if they're a majority necessarily, but I'll just keep you on the deep state map here. But over here in the Ivano-Frankivsk region right here is predominantly, there's a huge Hungarian population, and then there's a Romanian population in Chernivtsi. What do you think about Russia forcing new referendums? I don't care. I don't think they matter. I don't think that they're legitimate, like votes. I don't think voting in Russia is legitimate. I don't think voting in Ukraine is legitimate. And I think voting in the United States is an illusion of an option of two choices that are presented to you by the permanent establishment government. So really, I don't think voting matters at all, ever. So You have a referendum, pretend like it is professional and matters, and then just take the territory that you were going to take anyway. It's theater. It's theater for capturing territory, but it is what it is. Do you think that Russia will attack Poland? God, I hope not. And no, I don't see any reason for that. Russian-Polish relations are not particularly bad. You just have hardliners that want to be so in with the U.S., I would say, that they almost will go. I mean, they definitely go against their own pragmatic interests. And Poland is doing it, but so is the rest of Europe. No, I do not think that Russia has any interest in any war in Ukraine or Poland or Baltics or anywhere else. I don't think that they wanted this war in Ukraine. I think that they invaded Ukraine during the height of the muddy season in February with a well undersized force, and it went and it didn't go the way they wanted it to go. So happens. And 3 years later, now they're going to just win the war their own way. Calibrated predict future events of 2020. Or I'll start watching that David Davi guy instead. Okay, here we go. I do think something's actually going to happen with Greenland in 2025. I think that that's a very serious thing. I do think the U.S. is going to focus heavy on Iran right now, which is going to be difficult for them. We'll see how that plays out. But more importantly, I think you're going to start to see some major military buildup by the United States in one of these the countries in the South China Sea, Japan, the Philippines. They're going to try to do another Ukraine, force a reason to basically shut off Chinese shipping in the South China Sea. That's the goal, right? And then just starve China economically or force them into a conflict, which, it doesn't benefit either side, but this is like calling a bluff. It was just like in Ukraine when the Ukrainians were poised to go on the offensive into the Donbass region, and the Russians were sitting there in February, again, when the mud was 10 feet deep, and they said, now is when we want to go into the country. Not 3 months ago when the ground was solid frozen and we could hit all of the energy infrastructure and shock and awe this and go in. Not in the summer when the temperature is nice and the roads are solid and the dirt is hard. No, we went in during the muddy season. It doesn't make any sense. So I do think that we're going to see the U.S. prop up a country in the South China Sea or force some casus belli to restrict Chinese shipping through the South China Sea. And I think that'll be the start of the conflict. So in the next, I don't know if that's 2025, that's probably going to take a couple of years, but you're going to start to see that happening. Trump let me down, caving for HB1 visas. Hey, listen, I don't mind brain drain, all right? I don't want immigrants coming into the country that aren't going to be paying taxes and aren't going to be doing it the right way. I think you need to wait in line. But H1B visas, and I know that there's like the whole thing about companies paying foreigners less. Whatever. I mean, that sucks. I get it. And I'm not necessarily impacted by this, so it's not like a thing for me. I don't want illegal immigration. I don't want unchecked immigration where people are coming in and they're not actually providing a service to the United States. But most H-1B visas are engineers and stuff like that. And yes, they are coming in and taking American jobs, but I would rather be brain draining our enemies than having all of those people stay in those countries and give their intellectual power to the CCP or to the Kremlin or to any of these countries. So there's pros and cons for sure. Definitely Americans getting paid less is a problem. But yeah. You got to remember, all of Americans are immigrants. My family came over in like the 1880s from Scotland. So on my dad's side. How many countries in the world have you been to? Oh, let me think. like 15 or 16, probably. When you're in Europe, you just go through countries sometimes, and it's like super quick. You don't even know you're going through them. It's like states here. Like we have tiny states that are bigger than countries in Europe, and it's just funny that it like 2 hours to drive through a country. Virgin voters versus Chad revolutionary popularists. What Poland? They can't even take Kursk. Exactly. And I love this. This is the Russian. This is the Schrodinger's Russia, right? At the same time, Russia is going to invade Poland, but also is the third best army in Kursk. It's a crazy thing, man. It's one of these wild things that doesn't make sense. The Russians are so bad, except they're advancing everywhere else. But yeah, just keep focusing on Kursk, because that's where Denny tells you that somebody's advancing, even though that hasn't happened at all. They tried about 2 weeks ago to advance, and they got shit kicked. So all right, guys. What happens to NATO? Article 5 if the U.S. takes Greenland? Nothing. Literally nothing. What happens to the Baltics if Russia invades? Nothing. Bro, there is not a chance in hell that the U.S. is trading Washington for Vilnius, Lithuania. Yeah. Or any of these other places. Like you're not going to trade major U.S. cities for these outer satellite states. It's not going to happen. So, not saying that Russia's going to invade the Baltics. I don't think they are. Doesn't make sense. But all right, god damn. Why did NATO succeed in arming and training Croatians against the Serbs, but failed in training arming the Ukrainians? Well, the Serbs were an isolated military that was getting hammered by U.S. Air Force, so it wasn't really the same situation at all. And the Serbian army was much smaller than the Russian army. You have to train a lot of Ukrainians, and the Russians have basically killed a lot of the Ukrainians that the West trained. And as you can see, the brigades that the West trained, like the French brigade that just had 1,700 of its men go AWOL, it didn't work out very well. What are your goals for you and your girlfriend this year? Shit, man. I don't know. I'm trying to get basically in a position to be completely financially set for like the next, like for the rest of my life, basically. So that's what I'm working on really hard right now outside of all of this. Getting to that point personally is huge for me. And then I would love to buy a home. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but I want to go buy some land and maybe build a home, or if there's a home on it, buy that. Question. Were those Ukrainian deserters where are those Ukrainian deserters going to? Are they still in Ukraine, or are they bolted elsewhere? I have no idea, man. It was 1,700 guys. I know 55 of them went AWOL in France, so those people are still probably in France and did not come back to Ukraine. The other ones deserted around. Not sure where they have bolted to. If they're smart, they left the country. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. That brings us to 1 hour and 13 minutes. This has been episode 130 of the Calibrated live show with your host, me, the one, the only Scott. Thank you, all the Jimmies, for being in here today. The one not idiot one, and then the two idiot ones. You guys are great. Thank you for helping my ad revenue. Thank you for helping me on the algorithm. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Take care, be safe, and I will probably see you guys on Saturday. Goodbye.